welcome to another Exploring Starcraft 2 lore. In this series, we'll be exploring the history of the Protoss race, specifically in Starcraft 2. So, these guys, if you like this content, you're watching on YouTube, eventually do, if you reach the end and have now come back, do like and hopefully subscribe, and not for me, for the Z-Lot. Whoa! 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 Are ya? Nailed that now.
Hey, chill. Okay, down, boy, down. Okay,
And,
good,
and
Zealot. All right.
And with me, we have two wonderful gentlemen joining me. First of all, we have from the Five Shades of Protoss, FearDragon.
Yeah, good to be here again, ready to learn more about Protoss lore so I can, of course, represent how honorable and great they are and how they're also very honorable in like actual 1v1 ladder and stuff, which I feel like just gets underrepresented. People always say that they're dishonorable to play, but I don't think that's true.
Well, he was back, so balance is restored. FearDragon has a wonderful YouTube
Yeah,
channel. Link will be
yeah. He
here.
was dropping nukes on stuff, wasn't he?
And on the
I,
mothership.
I, yeah. I love that. It's like those old paper towel commercials. It's like, let's see which the three factions is most absorbent.
And I was
Yeah.
so happy to see somebody ask in the comments, what about the Immortals Hardened Shield?
Yeah, that's like another useless fact that I actually covered. It's the same thing with actually a battle cruiser Yamato cannon or a nuke. If the immortal takes damage and activates the barrier, it'll survive like a nuke or a Yamato cannon. But if it literally just takes it and nothing attacks it first, it will die. So like it'll just get one shot by them. So it's like very anti like logic. You have to attack your own unit to survive.
All right,
I
I
love
want
that
everyone
stuff.
to remember that if you see a red dot, the first thing you want to do is attack all of your immortals. All right.
At the right moment though, because you don't want the barrier to expire first.
I now
It's
re-
actually it's like tricky timing.
I really need to ask, have you ever actually seen that happen in a pro game? Like somebody deliberately attacks their own immortal to prevent incoming damage?
No. Never seen it in a pro game. I have seen it impact pro games with Yamato cannons on immortals though. That has actually I've seen that happen where like there were 3 or 4 battle cruisers and they all were Yamatoing different immortals. And some of the immortals survived and some of them didn't, which is actually how I found out about that.
Oh,
Walking into a stasis trap is a good policy if there's a nuke coming down, right?
If
I remember
only you could
that.
stasis your own units. That would be the
Yeah,
dream.
I mean, in the original game, you could. In the original game, there was legitimately some possibility in casting stasis on stuff to defend them, but those times are, yeah, it's a different place.
good time. Which is actually funny because we will actually be going through the immortal lore as a unit because it very carefully shows the difference between the different factions, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. Your Dragon also has a wonderful Twitch channel. He does a lot of these great talking streams, normally after coming back from a tournament. Great place to hang out, to follow as well. And and a and a wonderful Twitter to hang out with, where posts with Upper Tree are always entertaining to read.
Yeah. Uh you know, not everyone describe it quite that way, a wonderful place, but you know, some people enjoy it, I guess.
I enjoy it very
Yeah,
much.
well, you and up a tree, it's like you're the devil on his shoulder. If that devil actually caused a lot more pain towards the person he was corrupting instead of just trying to get him to abuse other people.
Yeah, I've realized actually that it's really fun. The thing that annoys him the most is when you're positive and supportive of him. So now I just act positive and
Ooh,
supportive, and I think that actually enrages him more than anything else right
reverse
now.
psychology.
Yeah.
You're somehow the positive reinforcement to the Terran player.
Yeah, the Terran players aren't used to having like positivity in their lives. So
Not out there. Alright, and who is this handsome man wearing the nicest shirt of us all,
Eh,
undeniably given the occasion?
that's true.
It is from Minnesota Barcraft, HyperTurtle.
HyperTurtle indeed. And aside from the shirt, I also brought an additional pylon.
Well done. Well done.
Indeed.
You prepared more than me.
Even
Well,
got the Protoss
I've
poster in the background and everything.
trying. I'm working on getting my name out there a little bit more. Yeah, I run Minnesota Barcraft, and last month we actually had our first actual live, full-on Barcraft in a few years over at the Mall of America. There's a nice esports venue there called Wisdom Gaming, and they were happy to have us. We got to get together, some very familiar faces too. And then, yeah, I do my best to find stuff to post about. Uh, Less StarCraft news, more just kind of what the heck is going on at Blizzard. But actually, this last month has been really good for StarCraft news. I'm excited about the balance patch. I'm excited that GSL is confirmed for next year. I'm excited about more plushies for our friend Red Gunner Guy to wave in front of the camera when he asks people to like, share, and subscribe. And I've also been working very closely with Skystorm Gaming lately. We have something called the FSL, which is the Fun StarCraft League. So it's a bunch of kind of casual players, but in a very organized tournament format with quite a few bells and whistles. KJ Freedom runs it. He's been doing a great job. I actually was able to meet up with a bunch of them in person over at Cheesadelphia a couple months ago. And if you want to see me actually get handedly defeated by a 10-year-old, that is there are some videos for you. I've been getting involved with casting along with my friend War Bunnies. We've been calling ourselves the Tortoise and the Hare. And what we're hoping is to also start doing more social media stuff, more kind of community Twitch streams where we can both get more people involved, promote some Patreon, and I'm just really excited to be so involved with some more hands-on stuff.
Yeah, great to hear. The links to all these gentlemen, including Storm Gaming, again, great team supporting many of our top players, you know, among others, as well as their website. All these links will be down in the description. And
Mhm.
thank you, first and most importantly, thank you guys for coming here and listening to me attempt to put on a show about the Protoss.
Yes, let's talk purity of form then, huh?
Ah, yes, we're going there. And of course, for me, I have, well, if you're watching this on Twitch, I have a YouTube channel which been doing a bit more Stormgate recently, and this is actually part two of a two-part video. For anybody who goes back and watches the old one, I am very sorry I had a cough, but we scheduled this so far in advance that I could not bring myself to cancel, even though that probably was the right decision. I don't can rush so often, so every so often you have to abandon the building. Yeah, I'm just gonna let it go up and lose my MMR. But again, I hope that I fixed the audio and my cough this time, so better, and of course my Twitter where I post stuff about my YouTube.
It can be very rough to play StarCraft if you're not feeling well. It can be even rougher to talk about StarCraft when you're not.
Yeah, so again,
Well, I'm
apologies
glad to.
yeah,
Yeah,
apologies
glad you're
anyone.
feeling better.
Apologies to anyone who listened to the previous version. Even I'm having difficulty sitting through my own voice when I suddenly cough. I've got the
Yeah,
mute button here in case that happens. Alright, but times are wasting. Let's get into the
yeah. So where we left off, we were kind of heading into StarCraft 2. We were looking at the defeat of Ulrazaj, and the Daylom had been formed by the Nerazim and the Ire Protoss, right?
yes, yes. But to go through the general scope of what we're doing, yes, that is where we stopped off at the story beat. Okay, so for anyone watching this time, we're taking a different approach because the last time we had a single source get the majority of it, which was the manual. This time we're going to be focusing on how the Protoss are doing post Legacy of the Void, and the 5 Protoss factions are bonus points if you can list them in your head right now. Um, and something to note that there will be some information that is speculation. We'll highlight that is. What we're not covering for those who aren't, when I watch a YouTube video, I'm wondering, is he gonna say it? Is he gonna say it? Is he gonna say it? Some things that we're not gonna be covering, for example, is things that happened in Brood War StarCraft 1. We covered most of what we want to say. We're not going to be covering too much of unit lore, with the exception of the one unit that I mentioned earlier, because that has so much content that is its own thing. Sorry, Zealot. Um, we're not going to be covering this much of the Spear of Adun, because while that is really really cool, it doesn't fit into the lore section as neatly. And lastly, something that I want to make clear, because we're talking Legacy of the Void, we are talking the co-op mode, which is the most popular mode for StarCraft 2. Those missions are ambiguously canon at best. Um,
The
because
way I, I'm
yes,
sorry.
go ahead, please.
The way I look at co-op, I mean, they consider it to kind of be an alternate timeline. There's some characters who are dead, who are just kind of hanging out there. It's not quite dead, getting better. But the big thing is almost all the co-op stuff kind of takes place right towards the end of the main Legacy of the Void campaign. So it's sort of like, what if before straight up taking on Amon, all these different forces just kind of decided to work together instead of it just being Artanis's forces trying to go in there and retake Ire.
Uh,
So it's kind of what if. What if there were a lot more people getting their hands dirty during that final series of offenses, and what if a couple of them weren't dead?
y'all have a better time, unless you're Mexic. Yeah, the core missions were always a tricky one for me, because it might hit some of them. Let's say with Vader and Kerrigan, that could have been happening because the Zerg and the Terrans were fighting against Amon's forces right at the end, but Tychus was Tychus did make it. Then you have Megs, you have Zeratul, so it's a bit weird.
Mhm.
And I do need to make this distinction clear, because we will be touching very heavily on some co-op stuff. We
And
take
there's some co-op stuff. There's some stuff that was introduced in co-op, namely Stetman's Mechazerg swarm that were made canon later. So some of the stuff in co-op was inspired by things that were meant for the game but didn't get in there, and then vice versa. Some of the stuff in co-op was just so popular they had to find a way to fit it into the main canon.
Yeah, and a way to interact with some of the factions is via the co-op with two of those. Well, one, two, three. Yeah, technically five of those commanders, depending on how far you stretch Zeratul and the Ihadri. But again,
Mhm.
not fully canon. Ambiguously canon is the term. Uh, that I I sound way too
Alternate canon,
I
I think.
sound way too scholarly for a discussion on video game lore. Uh,
It's a fan fiction. Co-op. It sounds like co-op. It's almost like a fan fiction you get to write every time you play.
And yes,
that's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
in this version, Tychus and Zagara did get married. Or not. It's up to you to decide.
Best friends, but not really.
Oh, I
Okay.
10 out
love
of 10
those
would
then.
read.
Would you though? Okay, okay. But yes,
Alright, so moving on from canon,
yes,
or moving on from co-op.
yes. Well, so what happened between StarCraft 1 and 2 before we get into the main stuff?
A 4-year gap. Mostly all the factions who were there in the final mission of StarCraft 1, Brood War. I believe Omega is the name of the final mission.
Hmm?
They basically all fall back and rebuild. Minsk starts preparing the Dominion. Raynor uh, starts preparing to, do his freedom fighting. Zeratul goes exploring. Artanis and the other Protoss start building up a society together on Shakuras and working on ways to get along. Uh, Kerrigan, despite her victory, ends up kind of bringing all the Zerg back on Char and just staying there, working on evolving, working on trying to figure out various ominous feelings she has. And the UED almost all die, with just a couple people couple little pockets that got left behind that weren't involved in that final offensive.
If we ever do a Terran
And
episode,
then
there's so much to complain about, but
believe me, you can complain, you can get salty about Terran lore too. Make no mistake.
very, very salty. But
So
we're not
there
there.
was a bit of conflict where everyone kind of got drawn into this whole thing with a great big dark archon uh on Ire going on the offensive. And then just other than that, just little things, just mostly politics in the meantime.
Yeah.
And as far as the Protoss go, it's you had a group that was being persecuted for you know lifetimes that was now hosting their former oppressors on their planet. Ire was gone. They worked together. So Sacrifice. Artanis was kind of the one leader that both sides could get behind. And one of the few things they could agree about is they wanted to eventually take back their mutual original homeworld of Ire. Um, and they started building towards that, building up the Golden Armada, this big fleet. They started cooperating and even designing things together, like the Void Ray was a combination of Kalai and Nerazim engineering. It took advantage of stuff they both used. Some unrest. I mean, all the way back to Brood War and the Enslavers' Dark Vengeance thing. You had some Dark Templar that were trying to just go around and start killing Ire Protoss.
Not happy.
So yeah, well, there was a lot of legitimate grudges. It's like, okay, you were driven off a planet, slaughtered and slaughtered, and now you're inviting everyone, welcome mat and everything. They also, more and more were finding that they had to go to higher measures. So that's where they brought the Colossi back, which were these computerized weapons of war that were deemed too destructive for them to keep using. They brought motherships back, which had been taken out of commission. So it's like anything they can find. They're starting to find ways to incorporate it, even if it might risk backfiring, even if they might end up using them on each other.
Yeah. I mean, in the description for the Colossi were the first Protoss robots designed solely for destruction. They are both a symbol of bloody history and a weapon to secure a peaceful future. I remember when these first came out, they said that, oh, the Colossus were locked away until we needed them, and they never appeared during the fall of Ire, so I guess now's the time to wake them up. Much like the spear.
Yeah, I'm looking.
Yeah, I think that's like one of the few lore things that always stuck with me in the campaign, where it was literally like Colossus come out and they're like, yeah, these these were too powerful to be used. Like, oh snap.
Yeah, and the fact there was no use for them other than destruction.
Hmm.
Where a lot of Protoss machinery were used for other
Mm.
things, like Reavers, I believe, were kind of their own like mobile factories. They didn't have to create scarabs that blew things up, but that's what they mostly ended up making. I'm
And
trying to remember. There
ironically,
was Yep, go on.
ironically, Colossus faded out of the 1v1 meta as we had our Reavers reintroduced into the game. Well, it was truly more destructive.
Well, now you get to choose how you want to make your opponent cry. Before you call in the carriers and the Void Ray, which does mention here that the Void Ray is the result of combining Templar and Nerazine technology. Void Ray is the devastating assault ships, so on and so forth. Um, yeah, basically a way for Blizzard to explain how we're throwing in new units is either we found old stuff that we're gonna use now, or the because now you have Nerazim and Protoss and Templar knowledge being shared, or Aya Protoss, we can now. It's like the mothership is another one that comes from the past and gets
Yeah,
immediately abducted by Viper.
it's a neat kind of concept. It's like they're both going forward with their technology, but they're also looking back. And yeah, I finally found the right article here. There was a race called the Kalathi, and those were one of those races that the Protoss were sort of overseeing, defending. There was a civil war on their own planet. The Protoss tried to help, and they ended up wiping out all of them. Almost. They basically blast them back to the Stone Age. So they did not get to become a fourth faction.
Huh,
In other words.
they did
And I
that?
remember there was a fun little FAQ that they did leading up to Heart of the Swarm where someone asked about them and they're like, "Oh, they're still alive. You know, there's still Calathe around, but they are so devastated. They don't stand a threat to absolutely anyone. So don't expect to see them in StarCraft 2."
Purity of sadness.
Yep, purity of missed opportunity. Yeah. All right.
Well, it's hard enough to balance 4 races. Go and ask the Warcraft 3 folks.
Well,
But
they're in
yeah,
PTR too, so for what it's worth.
that is true. Very true.
All right.
All right. So,
What do we got?
so, so those are some of the things that happened. We covered a few of them. The whole giant dark archon thing we covered in the previous
Mm-hmm.
episode. If you can endure the cough, it's there. All right. So a lot of things happened, and then Tychus, is introduced in that awesome trailer in 2010. Okay. Then the events of StarCraft 2 happened. Okay. So to ask Mr. FearDragon as our resident every man StarCraft 2
Every
enjoyer.
player.
Yeah, what do you remember of the StarCraft 2 campaign?
Okay. So StarCraft 2 campaign, in my mind, this is like
Oh,
how everything went down.
please.
Jim Raynor is suddenly like very depressed about Kerrigan, even though he like there's the whole turnaround that everyone likes to talk about of his emotional like stance toward Kerrigan. Let's, set that aside.
There were
And
supposed
then
to be
his old
4 years in between, so that
yeah,
was one of the
yeah.
things that kind of gets left out.
So he has like his depression phase. His old pal Tychus comes back and is like, "Hey, we should go do this thing. I got like this sweet dealer who just wants these Zelnaga artifacts." Like, and they're like, "Oh, cool, let's go after Zelnaga artifacts." Oh, there's Kerrigan who disappeared for a while, but I don't actually understand why she had disappeared for a while, but here she is now. And then there was kind of like the fight for Zelnaga artifacts. Gradually, I think a few things get revealed about like, oh, the Mobius Corporation, and here's like, I don't think Duran was revealed in Wings of Liberty. I think
It
he
depends whether you like to read names backwards or not.
yeah, yeah. I think he showed up, but like the reveal of who he was wasn't there yet. But I think his
Yeah.
like character got introduced. You have like
Correct.
Arturus
Correct.
Minx's son. Sorry, what?
Correct. Correct. Yes. Yes.
Oh
Absolutely.
yeah,
Full
yeah.
mark so
Go
far.
on.
Yeah, so they introduced like a bunch of new characters like Valerian and stuff. We have the big climax stuff of, oh, we can use the Zelnaga artifacts to like unzerg Kerrigan because that will be good, and Jim Raynor wants Kerrigan to be human again, and everyone else is like, well, this will end the swarm stuff. So they do that. There's the whole Tychus trying to betray Jim, but then Jim like kills him instead and saves Kerrigan because Tychus wanted to kill her because he was hired by Minsk. And then we get into Heart of the Swarm, where then I think Kerrigan has like a sudden crisis of like not wanting to be there or anything, and she's just like, I'm gonna bugger off and go do my own thing. And I actually really like being in charge of the swarm again. So she just kind of goes back. That whole thing is a little bit fuzzy to me of her reasoning why
She thought
exactly.
that Raynor was dead.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Right. There's the whole Minx fakes Jim Raynor's
Hmm.
death and stuff. So that whole thing happens. Then she goes and finds like the old Zerg, thanks to Zeratul, who basically says, you need to go to this planet. This is like where the OG Zergs were. If you want to be an
Yep.
OG, Zerg gangster, then you got to go hang with this crew. So then she
Zavis.
does, yeah. Yes, Xeris. And then she does that. We get swarm hosts and stuff in the campaign. And then she comes
What
back.
happened?
Some stuff happens that I don't
Yeah.
remember,
That's fine.
but I know that,
No,
yeah,
no,
like,
no Protoss were harmed in that section mostly.
yeah, it's like she basically is fighting such and such against Minsk, and finds out Jim Raynor is actually alive. She goes to rescue him, and then they kind of have a whole showdown thing where she kills Minx, and then suddenly it gains the ability to fly and flies off into the sunset. That's like my recollection of End of Heart of the Swarm. And then
Yep.
Legacy of the Void, it's like
Yay.
hard cut to, by the way, the Protoss have just been dying this entire time. And suddenly like they're ready to go reclaim their homeworld and take back Ire. From there, I remember that there's like Zero Tool steps in and is like, Artanis, wait, bro, I got some shit for us to do. Artanis is like, no, man, we got to do this. Zero Tool's like, no, I gotta stop. No, we gotta go do this other thing first. So he's like, no, we need to take back Ire. Like, this is super important. And then Zero Tool is like, all right, whatever. I can't do anything about it. So then they go in. Zero Tool ends up dying because Artanis didn't listen to him, basically. Gets because of the whole Amon using the Kala to take over the Protoss. Then I think there's the whole, we need to figure out how to separate ourselves from that whole like Kala, and let's go back to the Dark Templar because the Dark Templar aren't connected with the Kala, so they have more experience with this.
That's it for
And
them,
then it's
yeah.
just kind of like, yeah, it's like a rallying of different Protoss groups and stuff, and they go find what's his name, dark armor, red dude who's everyone loves.
Alarak.
Alarak, yes, Alarak. Find him, and it's just kind of like assembling the boys and the girls to go kick Amon's butt, and then they kind of join forces with Terran and Zerg and Kerrigan and Jim Raynor and stuff in the like epilogue.
The boys, the girls, and the bot. And the bots.
Yeah, the
The
purifiers
boys-
come into the
Yes, they
Right.
do.
the robot Protoss.
Right.
Yeah.
Phoenix, Phoenix Reborn. There's something I'm missing where I know that they like go back to the Overmind to like go revisit and be like, let's talk to Tassadar. Oh, JK, it wasn't really Tassadar. It was just like some Zelnaga, like, oh cool, the Zelnaga exist and are here. And then there's I can't even remember where Legacy of the Void actually left off, and like the epilogue stuff begins where
Oh,
they
that's
go
relevant.
trying.
But yeah.
Yeah.
They do
Um,
manage to defeat Amon and drive him back to, the void. And then,
Right.
and that's what I love. You have stuff like Legend of Zelda. It's like, all right, we've banished Ganon, and yeah, they banish Amon, but then they're like, we should just go in after him and take him out completely. Blizzard's not going
It
to
was
do
like
any
a Lord of the
sequels
Rings
anyway.
thing.
Let's YOLO.
Yeah, it was like a Lord of the Rings after like they defend Minas Tirith. They're like, we won. All right, let's go to Mordor. Let's do this. And they're like, oh shit.
The one time the F2A move actually worked for reasons that, yeah, it actually worked. And
Well,
it went to the void and killed Amon.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess one of the really important things, Kerrigan becomes Zelnaga herself, and somehow the Protoss don't ascend, though. Yeah. So the what I look at, there's definitely some. So the Daylom, Artanis's Protoss, they mostly get left out of Wings of Liberty and Heart of the Swarm. You get to see some of the Tal'Darim. You get to see Zeratul pop up here and there trying to figure out what's going on. But Legacy of the Void is really the first time where you get to follow the Golden Armada and what they're doing. And what you get is a lot of moving on from tradition, right down to getting haircuts. And you also get a lot of Artanis sort of sitting down with people and saying, we used to think the same about you guys.
Then Alarak comes back and is like,
Yeah.
we still think the way about you guys.
Alarak was a big. He saved the show because you needed a foil for Artanis after all those speeches. Artanis, hierarch of the Daylom. I expected so much more.
It was nice to have someone that didn't just like didn't end everything with like, all right, we best buds now. It's like, all right, no, someone stuck to their principles a little bit.
Right. And whereas you have these factions that join together, the Purifiers end up with the existing Daylom, I loved a little bit at the end because for the Tal'Darim, Alarak gives all of the troops under his leadership one opportunity to join the Daylum if they want to, while he stays separate. So it's like he, gives a couple inches, but not too much. And they still end up a little bit antagonistic. So I thought that was well done. And one of the big things, despite there's some very valid criticisms all over the place for StarCraft 2, but I love the fact that they actually gave it an ending. They didn't give it a cliffhanger like so many other video game franchises that end up sitting on that for 10 or 20 years.
Yeah, they actually ended the story with pieces returned to Cthulhu. Um, People are now actually getting along in general,
Yeah.
but they still had, they left the door open for other stories to be told.
Mm.
This Sacred Land is probably one of the better examples of that, where you have a completely different Zerg swarm fighting against a completely different Protoss faction. We'll get a little bit into that a little bit later.
Mhm.
But yeah, Fear Dragon, excellent actually. That the build order was very on point for the story. The whole part that you blanked out is like, yeah, I completely understand why of that.
Some of it runs together, all right.
The only thing I remember now that I didn't remember before I was explaining it was the whole Kerrigan sending out like a queen to basically take over an entire Protoss ship that then just never gets addressed again. I'm like, what was
It
the
does
point of that
eventually in the
mission?
webcomic. So the first war chest they did was accompanied by a comic book series that actually did bring back Niadra, as well as a Protoss
Ah.
character named Arun, who kind of popped up just once, and that was it.
Yep, Shadow
So
Wars.
yeah, it's good stuff. Yeah, there was something I was gonna mention, and oh yeah, so one of the big things StarCraft 2 also does is recontextualize what was going on with the Xel'Naga raising up the Protoss and Zerg, and you found out that it was actually only a small faction of the Xel'Naga that was doing that. The rest of them didn't get involved beyond kind of getting the ball rolling for Evolution. And it was actually Amon's guys, and it was all part of a very complicated long-term plot to try to end the whole sequence where the Xel'Naga you know, were continuing to basically uh, help out races that would eventually replace them, the Infinite Cycle. And you find out that along with all the Xel'Naga that got killed outside of Xeris when the swarm turned against them, Amon eventually killed almost all of the other Xel'Naga as well. The epilogue was a little rushed, and there's a lot of stuff you didn't really get into. Like they said the Kerrigan was ending the Infinite Cycle, but she kind of didn't. She became a Xel'Naga and apparently was shepherding new races. And you had this Xel'Naga named Oros, the guy who was pretending to be Tassadar. And Amon let him live and just kept him prisoner there with no explanation why whatsoever. But yeah, Duran was working for Amon, working on bringing him back. So
Yeah.
it wasn't like a full retcon, but some of the stuff from the manual they did recontextualize very heavily. It was like, yeah, the Xel'Naga were doing this, but this wasn't, these Xel'Naga weren't from the main group. They were actually trying to work against them and destroy them all.
And they won,
And
mostly.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back and if you endure through the last video, we did mention that a lot of the stuff in the manual was written as almost a point of view that
Hmm.
wasn't necessarily correct.
Yeah. The biggest retcon really was that in Brood War, Artanis looked like a Dark Templar. They used the same model
Yep.
for some reason. So he was walking around. He was piloting a scout in a loincloth and a mask, and it's like, and he was a new Protoss leader. They acknowledged that, but the Queen of Blades book kind of reintroduced him as the character who's you were playing as in the original StarCraft Protoss campaign, from defending Ire to trying to destroy the Overmind. And then you see all these flashbacks where he's all decked out in this gold armor. And even bigger thing, just like the Dark Templar stuff, his nerve cords were missing in the original game because they were using that Dark Templar model. So at some point he grew them back and then cut them off. Then you get to see him cut them off. Oh.
Yeah, there are certain things in certain materials, such as this very wrong picture of Vader I have on screen right now. That
Ooh, he needs a shave.
yeah, even I read this
And again,
like
I should talk. I don't know.
when I saw this picture when I was reading this, and like that is
Yeah.
not what he looked like the even in 1998. So
Well, in Brood War, you take something like the Zergling, it looked completely different in every context. In the manual, you saw one look for him. In the game, in gameplay, you saw a different one. The portrait had, looked different. And then in the cinematics, you saw these, four-legged Zerg creatures with hydraless heads that were smaller. So you chalk it down to art direction. It's just kind of like, a little bit of gaslighting. It's like, oh yeah, he had nerve cords there. It just looked like he didn't. And
of
yeah,
course
he
he
had
did.
armor too that he looked like he didn't have. So that's all good. Brood War, keep in mind, came out just like 8 months after the original Starcraft. So it wasn't like there was 2 or 3 years between expansions at the time.
And at that time, no hotfix patch.
Here and there, they were patching stuff actually.
No,
Um,
not to to what we see nowadays in gaming, where you could go in and
no. Uh, Interesting thing, and we'll get back to lore right after this one, but the original Brood War ladder, the original StarCraft and Diablo, they saved the player information directly on the computer, so you could hack them really easily. So you had these guys in Diablo with this who were marked as level 1, but had this ridiculously powerful armor and everything, or the opposite. They actually had guys who were level 99, despite 50 being the maximum you could level guys up to. And it was kind of similar on the StarCraft ladder. You could actually manually edit your ladder ranking. So that's one of many reasons why things like Fish and IC Cup became big, because you couldn't go with the actual BattleNet rankings.
Yeah,
So
early days of the
Protoss.
internet when internet security and networking were not
Uh,
really figured out. Yeah.
that actually mirrors StarCraft 2 development if you really think about it. How much was figured out as time went on, plus patches, plus this, plus that. But okay,
it's
but yes,
it's
just
always a continued process, and
stop my
but
brain,
yeah, yeah.
stop my brain from wandering. Let me hug this Zelon a bit more. Okay,
Oh,
great. So
oh.
yes. All right. So we're gonna take a bit of a different approach here, which is we just
Mhm.
finished a long round of story time. Okay, now we're gonna go
Yeah.
up into those individual factions, which is something I noticed, which is that as the story went on from Brood War to Wings to Heart to Legacy, we saw the evolution of sub factions. Um, and and in an interview with Kevin Dog, he actually pointed that out, and I think that we can actually say that the StarCraft 2 team was moving towards the sub faction. That could be something for Storm Game, which I'm very excited about. So we'll be going through those factions. Should I do it? Should I do it? Should I do it? Okay, okay. So let's start with the first major faction, something that HyperTurtle had mentioned prior, the Daylab.
Mhm.
Yes, who are the Daylab? Alright, so the Daylab consists of three major factions and what I call a minority fourth. So we start off as we always do with the Aya Protoss, which are technically these guys. So following the successful reclamation of Aya and the defeat of Amon came a heavy loss for the Aya Protoss due to the loss of the Kala. The situation was so bad that a rogue Kalai went as far to steal Nerazim technology in an attempt to recreate the Kala. The experiment was ultimately unsuccessful, with several Aya Protoss dying in the process. In addition, Artanis decreed that following the Second Great War and abolishment of the caste system, this left many Aya Protoss lost in purpose, yet again, not to mention the interaction with not only the Nerazim but the Purifiers. Uh, yeah, so for those out there who have been wondering, on the screen right now, there'll be links to literally every tab in the description of the video. We have the link to the Blizzard Short Story Hub. where you could read the short stories from, well, all of the Blizzard franchises, but this is
Yeah.
actually kind of incomplete because the
Yeah, they
story.
failed.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, for one thing, they failed to upload the Wings of Liberty stories there. They never saved that to the same format they did the rest of them. You had a bunch of those where it was all, each of them were themed after a specific unit. So, and then, yeah, just a few years ago, you had the Starcraft 2 10th anniversary where they added one new story for each faction, and One People, One Purpose by Alex X, I believe. Uh, Really fantastic one.
Good one.
They also brought them back to finish what they weren't able to put in comic book form for what was it? What was the
War
final
Chest?
comic?
The
Yeah,
War
the final
Chest?
War Chest comic. There was
Nature
yeah,
of the
Nature of the
Beast?
Beast. Yeah. So there's some really great stuff it examines, based on some of the stuff Protoss had lost. That community link in the Kala. So some of them were in withdrawal from that. Some of them just didn't know how to interact with others. So it was basically a lot of Protoss learning how to come up to someone and say, "How are you today?" Because before that wasn't even something they had to think about. They were linked. They knew immediately how every Protoss was feeling and how every one of their days had gone. So really powerful stuff there, like mourning a fellow dead Protoss together, which they did not know how to do.
They literally go up to the body. It's like, what do we do now?
Yeah.
What am I supposed to feel? Huh? How?
And
How?
how do I share it? How do I
Yeah.
express that? I mean, they don't even have mouths or noses. That like okay, there's the eyes, and then there's what they communicate telepathically, and they could still communicate telepathically without the Kala. The Kala was just it was just something that bound their memories and feelings.
Every
So it
thought
was
and emotion of our people.
oh yeah, indeed. So it went from being able to just inherently feel everything and remember everything to actually having to interpret
Did
it.
we mention the color got blown up? I think we did, right? Yeah.
We mentioned the haircuts and that it was
Yes. Yes.
corrupted.
Yeah.
Um,
They they
and
blew it
there's
up.
a little, yeah, and there's a little bit of stuff. There was the conflict on Guest, I believe, the book Evolution, which was by Timothy Zahn
Ah,
of
yes, that
the
one.
Star Wars Extended Universe fame. Didn't have a ton of Protoss stuff in it. What it did have was Artanis admitting that he felt kinda cheated that he didn't also get to ascend and become a Xel'Naga, because that was the idea. The purity of form and purity of essence creations were supposed to come together and form the next generation of Xel'Naga,
Have you
and they
read
never
this book,
really
Fear?
explained why.
Have you read this
Hmm?
book, Fear Dragon?
No, I also never really understood. I was like, the purity of form and purity of essence, I always was not super clear on whether it was supposed to be both of them were needed to like continue this cycle, or if it was like whichever one wins, like we'll go with that one. Like
I've
it
read
was
almost
very
everything,
unclear.
and I'm still not sure. I believe it's supposed to be them coming together. And Purity of Essence is a lot more straightforward because you see the Zerg evolve with Essence. But Purity of Form is a bit more vague. It seems to be like reaching the same potential with your mind and your body, but I don't know if it was ever just plain summed up.
Storm.
But yeah, Starcraft Evolution
Good book.
was one of the first books they did once they did a contract with Random House, Del Rey, Penguin, those publishers. But since then, it's only been Warcraft. That was the only Starcraft novel that they did under that publishing partnership.
I mean, if you see from the
But yeah,
title, it's mostly a Terran story. Like that's the main characters. There are some interesting Protoss ones there. Don't want to give too much away. The reason for your dragon I asked is because there is a disruptor in this book with an explosion several kilometers wide.
yeah. I look at tactical nukes the same way too. It's like a nuclear blast probably is going to cover a little bit more area than you usually do during gameplay.
Mm. They basically the Protoss, to make themselves more OP, decided to make their own disruptors more OP. Makes way too much sense.
It was the
No, but
opposite direction we might be going with the next patch. We'll see.
Eh.
no, it totally makes sense. That's why the Colossus were too dangerous and they need to seal them away.
Yes,
The
indeed.
most
Absolutely.
dangerous unit in the Protoss arsenal.
They s- they managed to seal away the entire spear of a dude, so
Mm.
that's a tricky one. Yeah, so that's how the Daylab are in general. Well, the Aya Protoss within the Daylab are doing. Okay, so let's talk about the other group that we talked about the last time, Nerazim, which are also these guys. When I turn off the lights. Okay, so
Yeah.
despite the loss of Shakur's, the Nerazim leadership are content as they now live on Aya together with their Aya and Purifier cousins. However, an area that vexed them was those attempting to bring back the glory of the Golden Age. While it was a Golden Age for the Aya Protoss, Nerazim was still persecuted by the Conclave, hence leading to resentment. This was introduced in the Golden Age, a skin set. Their view of the Purifiers, as far as I know, are unknown. A very short summary of
Well,
that.
in the collection tab in StarCraft 2, if you hover your mouse over any skin, it will have some flavor text, and some of it is just explaining, ooh, this one, this version is supposedly more aerodynamic or came from, this faction or something. But as they moved along with it, they actually started kind of having their own little mini stories, and each description was a little bit of a thread of what was going on. And we'll get in that most with the Yihan but the other ones, sometimes they'd be just sprinkling little story crumbs about like something that went wrong while they were trying to create their own simulant form, that kind of thing.
The Tal'Darim
So,
one to me is still the funniest.
oh yeah, yeah, they're an interesting society, and
Oh,
even when
absolutely.
they're not voiced by John Delancey.
Oh, yes.
I I
Go
guess the
ahead.
one question I did have about the Nerazim was, were zealots like, did the Nerazim have zealots pre-joining, I guess, back with the Ire Protoss and everything before all this other stuff happened? Like, or were Dark Templar effectively just their zealots?
I think the idea is they had equivalents of a lot of stuff. They were still trained the same way. Not all of them could turn invisible, uh, and not all of them completed the Shadow Walk. But some of it's just convenience of game design. In Brood
Yeah.
War, you had the Dark Templar, you had the Corsairs, which were Nerazim Tech, and the Dark Archons, but they couldn't redesign. They couldn't design a completely unique faction like they started doing with, say, Warcraft 3 and the Naga. But yeah, the idea is there are a lot of stuff that existed that just, were never available to you during some of the campaign missions. And there's
Yeah.
also kind of the concept that in verses, you're given the standard loadout, but there are all these other stuff that could be at your disposal if you'd loaded them out before you got into whatever conflict you were in at the beginning of that match.
Gotcha.
The
Yeah, that
big
makes
thing is they
sense.
did not have the caste system. Their engineers could still, do psi blades and fight and stuff, whereas with the Ire Protoss, the Kalai weren't trained in combat at all. They were just kind of just up there. So there's that whole thing. One of the missions is as they're starting to get overrun, you see Karax just kind of standing there. Couple of the warriors next to him go down, and him and the other engineers are just kind of, oh boy.
They don't even turn to run.
Nah, nah, and probably wouldn't have done any good anyway.
Well, it was a Zergling. Um, but yeah, the other important thing to note is that there were far fewer Nerazim than Aya Protoss, so you don't have that many engineers to start with compared to the Kalai. Which is which is why you use Dark Templars. Flawless you could win a professional
Yeah,
game of StarCraft 2 without
don't lose
losing a
units.
unit, without losing a single unit. I love that black bug. Anyway,
Well,
coming
the
back.
idea is like stalkers were something they were working on. They got introduced, and they have like the, I guess, kind of spirit. I don't know how to say it, but of a warrior. They're not a wounded warrior whose torso got tossed into a shell. They're actually like a machine that absorbed the mind and everything and
The
energies.
text here says shadow essence
Yeah, shadow essence.
of the
And of
warriors.
course, you still have to toss a little mask on that machine, little ninja mask, where it's even less useful than putting a mask over a nose and mouth that aren't there.
Hmm. Well, maybe it's a tradition out of some ancient COVID for them.
Uh, I think a fun little concept too is that the Ire Protoss end up kind of increasingly turning to the Nerazim. It's like,
Totally.
so what do you guys do without the Kala? And there's kind of a role in some later stories where the Nerazim are kind of serving as guides uh, on how to go forward, and even at the end of Nature of the Beast, even creating group therapy sessions for Terrans.
The
So
outcasts are now the therapist. Who would have
they're
thought?
they're well, it's an interesting concept. What they were refusing to get involved with is now what no one has.
A brave new world.
It has such Protoss in it.
It does. I mean, coming back to the Stalker, to touch on that Golden Age skin set, let me just read the text blurb for the Golden Age Stalker specifically. Uh, Kalai face smiths have attempted to recreate Nerazim Stalkers in the elegant style of the ancient Templar. However, the result elicited more offense than admiration, probably from both sides. So,
That
yeah.
that rings very true in modern society. It's like, oh, this was to flatter you. That's insulting. It's like you kind of missed the point there, pal.
Yeah, so they've got a lot of history to figure out, but also things as HyperTurtle correctly mentioned, like, okay, well, what do we do without the Kala? Um,
Mm.
well, can we ask the purifiers? No, not really, because it's
Well,
mentioned in that story that the purifiers largely kept to themselves. But before we get ahead of ourselves, and what are the purifiers? Okay, here we go.
mm,
Uh, right. So eons ago, the Protoss experimented with advanced sentient AI, probably using random forest. They did so by modeling these models based on their greatest Templar, well, who are the warriors. However, they failed to treat these Templars with respect and simply attempting to bind them to their will. The Purifiers greatly resented this, eventually rebelling against their masters. In the aftermath of the rebellion, the Purifiers as a whole were put in stasis uh, at/on Cerberus, this school space station. The program, while shelved, would not be forgotten. Every so often, the Iron Protoss would work and make slight progress. It was also mentioned that in Legacy of the Void that a team of I was gonna say Kalai scientists, but that's like saying ATM machine, stationed around Cerberus improving the stasis.
mm.
Yep, so
Another nice little homage to the shield generator on Endor.
hmm,
That's always cute. So for a very long time, the Ire Protoss and probably most Protoss have had robots to do work for them. Probes, observers, reavers, shuttles, warp prisms, colossi.
I mean
Uh,
we have
and
Roombas,
they
so what could we say, right?
so they were computers. They could make all kinds of decisions, but they didn't feel. They were just artificial intelligence. So they ended up playing around with the idea of actually modeling some of these robot intelligences after their own people, particularly some of their top ones. So they're trying to emulate some of their greatest leaders and warriors and inventors. But they're still treating them as if they're just machines. And these guys who have these very proud personalities instilled in them kind of resented that, and they ended up killing a lot of Protoss and got locked away. And you have the whole thing once again with Artanis putting things in perspective after just a beautifully awkward conversation with this purifier who has Phoenix's personality, and everyone's just kind of looking at each other like, should we tell him? And by the way, if you want to know if someone is a hardcore StarCraft lore guy, see whether they refer to that co-op commander as Phoenix or whether they insist on calling him Talendar. Because I loved it when they released that commander. All these hardcore lore people spoke up. They actually added an upgrade that you could buy with a little bit of gas and minerals to rename the hero unit. I would prefer to be called Talendar. But I remember one of the BlizzCons, there was a question and answer session, and someone came up and asked a question about Talendar, and I'm like, oh, that's a guy who takes things seriously. Didn't call him Phoenix. Anyway, so yeah, they get taken out after they'd already befriended this purifier of Phoenix and convinced them that they're going to see them as equals. And they have their own kind of internet Kala, basically.
But
They
not the full
are all
color.
connected. Yeah.
It,
The hmm?
if I may, yeah, it was important to note that one thing that Artanis and even Rohana to an Artanis says Rohana confirms is that one key reason, according to them at least, that they were not treated as equals is because their version of the color, the purifiers, could not convey thought and emotion. Therefore, the Conclave looked at them basically as second-class citizens at best, machines at worst, which led to the resentment, which led to the revolt.
Servants or slaves
Pretty
even.
much,
Yeah.
yeah.
Uh, and yeah, so they have a connection that they still feel, but it's different than the Kala, and it's not compatible with the Kala either, as they said.
Yeah.
But just like their personalities are modeled, so is the way that they're connected.
Yeah, I mean, you could really see how the thought process of the Conclave really shaped a lot of their history. This instance, um, of course, the other one being is that the Aya Protoss never actually forgot about the purifiers. Like it was always there. It was just it was in storage, and we didn't
They
need it
always saw
until
them as threatening, though. There were
yeah.
all these warnings from Rohana about what would happen if they got released.
I
Hey,
So,
just love the irony
we
hey,
that
look, a Colossus.
we should probably touch a little bit on the concept of preservers. We touched on that a little bit last time with the Dark Templar saga books. But the Protoss, some of the most powerful, some of the ones who have the most connection with the Kala are preservers. And they remember everything that any Protoss who was connected to Kala ever did. And not just like a history book, they can feel everything that every Protoss ever did at that moment, which also isn't a perfect way to remember history. You're seeing it very interpretively. You're feeling the self-righteousness of some things that were mistakes. And yeah, Rohana was one of three sisters that was kind of left with one of the three arc ships. And yeah, during the whole thing, I remember Loco referring to her as, "Yes, my racist aunt,"
Grandma.
because she'd inherited like you know millennia of prejudice and other things that weren't necessarily fact they were feeling.
Specific story, by the way, is called It Will End in Fire, and it's actually pretty well written and also quite tragic because you do know the fate of a lot of the characters in this book.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, you can find this story on the short story hub directly. This one.
And the Spear of Adun was one of three ships that were there basically to prepare for the apocalypse because it was inevitable it would happen at some point. And that, inevitable, along with her, there were all soldiers on there who, had been, who they managed to sever from the Kala before they took them out of stasis. So it paid, seemed like the plan paid off more or less, yeah.
Hmm. There was a long debate in the law Discord server on why it was never used, but I will stay away from and try not to start another eon of strife again. All right, so back to our back to our shiny boys. Okay, so it was a
Purifiers.
yep, being a purifier. The best known example of insight of the purifiers is Phoenix, later known as Talender or Strongheart. He was
Mhm.
activated. He believed he was Phoenix from Starcraft 1 as he held those memories. This time with Artanis during the campaign, Phoenix realized he was not Phoenix and chose to become his own person. So, other issue, well, the issue with the purifiers is that we don't know too much about them. Um, Honestly, the only two named characters we have is Polarian and Phoenix. But now we have to go into co-op territory, so let's go there. So, if you play StarCraft 2, which you should, it's free to play. You could actually play as the Purifier faction in co-op missions. Again, this is why we had a long disclaimer about this earlier. And
Up
we,
to level 5 if you don't pay.
well, for $5 you can get the whole Purifier
Oh
shebang.
yeah.
Right. So we do have certain characters there. So we have Caldaris. Okay, so basically these, if you buy these from the Purifier Conclave, oh wow, I remembered that. You can actually get stronger versions of them. So you have Caldaris. This guy is actually the guy from the Legacy of the Void. What was it called? Video introduction?
Trailer.
Sort of. No, it was
Or was it the trailer?
it was a lore video with limited animation. They've done some similar stuff with Warcraft, but basically it was Artanis and this Calderas guy standing on a moon or over Ire talking about whether or not they were making the right
Oh,
decision,
Reclamation.
or whether they were repeating history and creating more conflict. Yes, reclamation.
Oh man, so I'm sorry it's gonna be
So
disappointed.
yes. And he is also but yes, he is the guy from the opening as well. He is the guy with one eye who just does the big badass my life for ire, not knowing that there's just about to be reinforcements behind him. I believe his big line in Reclamation, I am a Kundalar, the
Tip of
tip of the spear. And he's longtime friend and advisor of Artanis, and is explaining that he volunteered to be one of the first ones in because someone has to do it,
Mhm.
to try to clear the way for the others, probably at the expense of his own life. With these guys, we don't know what happened to him. At the very least, he definitely got possessed by Amon, like so many of the others, but
Mhm.
kind of up in the air.
Yeah, poor chap. But again, non-canon, so there's a chance he might be alive if. Can I say this with straight face? Okay, I'll
I,
try.
I don't I don't think that having your mind uploaded to the Purifier network, that doesn't mean you're dead. Like Phoenix was still alive later. It was after he'd already become part of that project that he fell to Kerrigan, possibly with one Spawn Broodling spell if you were being real cool.
Actually, yeah. What exactly is the timeline for the purifiers being sealed away, like
Oh
in respect to
boy.
StarCraft 1?
Oh
Kind of
boy.
vague. It was well before StarCraft 1. It was when the Conclave were
Okay.
still around. So,
Yeah. Um, there
they don't really give anything specific,
there was
except it
a
was quite a long time
there
ago.
was a very very fierce debate that erupted once I asked this in the Discord server because
Uh,
yeah, because the question is, was the Purifier program before the exile of the Nerazim or after the exile of the Nerazim? And why wasn't a dude uploaded to Purifier network?
Dune, yeah.
Yeah, because you have this issue that with the Dark Templar, well, the exile of the Nerazim, a dude dies literally, spoiler alert, a dude dies there and then. So if this was before that time, then they theoretically should have had a copy of him. If it was after that time, then well, dude's already dead. But if it's after that time, then it's actually very, very recent because Razagal is still alive during those 1,000 years. So when
But
exactly
pretty
this
old by
happened,
now.
when
Yeah.
exactly this happened is unclear. For example, is it entirely possible that a dude was scheduled for an upload and died so suddenly that never he didn't make the appointment. We've all had that, but
The long and short, we don't know. Ask
yeah,
someone else.
You need to
But
ask
it was
Blizzard at this
definitely a
point.
while ago, and they were still doing it during Phoenix's lifetime.
Yeah,
Uh, but Protoss are pretty old, so when we're talking about someone's lifetime, we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of years.
1,000 years for us. Gal.
Some,
Yeah.
yeah, I think I, I don't know if it's rare for them to reach that age or not, but and then yeah, you got some other guys in co-op as well.
Yep, we
I
have
was just thinking it's a
Talus.
shame there's no
Yeah,
Tassadar.
there is no Tassadar.
Acida.
But also, you got to keep in mind, though, it is possible some of these guys actually were uploading the Purifier thing, and you just never saw them.
Still,
So I don't know. I'm not going there.
that's not. Oh, we also have Talus, which is the first,
Yeah.
I think, named adept character, or who has the adept model. She
Yeah.
was Zeratul guide in the Legacy of the Void prologue missions.
Yeah, and the Whispers of Oblivion, you couldn't build adepts, could you? But you saw her and some of her buddies show up, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So but yes, one of a handful of characters who show up, cover Zeratul's exit at the expense of their own life. That was a pattern with him, and it was part of what inspired his call downs in co-op.
Yeah, and that kind of how his story ended,
Yeah.
having the entire
Um,
Protoss race in one go.
now Teldarin, that's a deep dive. You you remember where he comes from without looking it up?
I could press
No,
the link, but
you could, but you're not going to. I'm going to cut you off. So yes, StarCraft 64 for the Nintendo 64. Uh, they had all the campaign missions. They had some custom maps, some original ones. If you beat every single campaign mission and you found like the cheat codes in there were just there were actual spots where if you took your units there, it would unlock a cheat as if they like found a secret document or something. All of those, there was actually a co-op split screen mission, which was where you cured Stukov of the Zerg infestation. And Teldarin, you have Raynor in there as one of your heroes. Teldarin is the hero for the other player, and he's a dragoon, and he introduces himself and mentions something about when he was on the battlefield with a dune, and Raynor's like, "Wait, a dune, as in Antaro a dune? You're that old?" So he was injured in battle. He was in a dragoon suit, and then yeah, for co-op, they brought him as an immortal. But yeah, I love the co-op guys because they really dug deep into some of these rabbit holes. Because I have never played StarCraft 64, and you saw how many odds and ends and collector's items I have.
and how?
Warbringer,
Yeah,
yep,
go. No, continue. Go.
yeah. So Warbringer, that's an interesting one because that was from the Enslavers campaign, which is these little veteran difficulty level missions that were included with the original StarCraft CD. Uh, as a campaign, we're basically just there to show you that, along with maps, you could create campaigns using the editor that shipped with it too. And that was a Reaver. So basically, that is the robot personality of a robot. Now a Colossus.
What if? What if feelings had feelings, aka
I don't
Inside
know.
Out? So the AI with
No, I,
AI.
I like to think of Data from Star Trek. What would it be like if you had feelings? You'd have to endure a lot of bad jokes. Is what is the answer? Then we got Mojo, who was also from both the first Enslavers campaign and was back in the Enslavers Dark Vengeance that you could download from the StarCraft Map of the Week, and was a scout pilot. And I don't think you really found out much more about him, other than the fact that apparently the canon choice was that you must have sided with the Protoss in the first Enslavers. So.
Of course we did.
And then yeah, Calarian is the leader that you're negotiating with when you first get the purifiers out of stasis. So he gets to be the big guy in the carrier.
Yep, he's the one that you tend to see often when people play Phoenix because they just mass carriers ASAP. Because why wouldn't you? Yes.
I like the 6 mission thing. And here if they get all 6 heroes on the battlefield at once, Red Gunner guy, tell them what they win.
They win a Probius. No, I'm not kidding. So if you actually get
Yeah,
all 6 heroes on the field, the next probe produced, and you actually have to go to the Nexus and find him, will be a Probius probe. And
from Heroes of the Storm.
there we go. The next probe will be turned into Probius, which looks a little different. Yeah, this is the co-op variant.
It's got a little halo on its back, that's all.
Yeah,
Yeah, there you go. So Probius supposedly was the probe also from the Legacy of the Void opening, the one that goes over and makes that pylon and then wanders off somewhere.
I remember the Heroes of the Storm community losing their minds, followed by the Starcraft community when they announced Probius as a hero, and it just works.
It it does. And I like kind of I especially like the relationship between Heroes of the Storm and Co-op because they're both, kind of non-canon. Heroes of the Storm, they're supposedly all these heroes from these different universes that are being brought in there to fight and different variations of them.
Let's please.
But there some of the guys they've introduced as Starcraft heroes in there, like what was it, Lieutenant Hammer
Sergeant
and
Hammer.
Sergeant Hammer, Lieutenant Morales. Morales is Lieutenant. Yeah, they ended up using them as advisors in co-op missions.
Mhm.
And Blaze. Blaze is one of the mercenaries under Tychus.
Yep. Of course, you have your standard heroes, Nova, Vader. Again, this one's also free to play, so if you want to give it a shot, why not?
I think at
And
the top of
also
the
on
page,
maintenance mode.
there's
Hmm?
a button to filter the top right by like universe. So you can click on the
Yes.
Yeah,
StarCraft
there is.
thing. Yeah, you can see all the StarCraft heroes.
You also have a lot of
Heroes
the
of the Storm,
other.
by the way, was originally going to be an arcade game for StarCraft 2, but they've ended up getting more ambitious and having it be a separate thing, but still using the same game engine.
Yeah, you also have a lot of heroes here with StarCraft 2 inspired skins.
Yep.
So if you have time, you can go and check them out. Okay, but
I don't know. Do we have time, or should
no,
we be moving on to this
we're moving on.
Tal'Darim? Because
We're
I think we're
absolutely moving.
starting. Yeah,
Okay,
Tal'Darim are a weird one because, like we said last time, the first time you heard Tal'Darim, which means the Forged, they were introduced in those Dark Templar novels, and they were just Ire Protoss who got left behind on Ire, got addicted to a drug called Sundrop, were following the Dark Templar Ulrazaj without knowing it. Then you got into Wings of Liberty and Heart of the Swarm, where you just kind of had these Tal'Darim who were still loyal to Aemon. Supposedly, when the Xel'Naga got driven away from Ire, they brought some Protoss with them, and they ended up becoming these loyal guys who worshipped Aemon as a god. But they still kind of kept things sort of vague that didn't really fit in. It's almost like Legacy of the Void. They're almost like they're different from them
oh, totally.
because they've got all this red energy and they have something called the Chain of Ascension, where, as they're trying to serve Aemon, they're also constantly trying to jockey for position by challenging each other to combat and moving higher up to take the spots of the people they've killed.
Yep. So one reason why the Tal'Darim are such, and to an extension, Alarak are so beloved is because they have such a unique and different, almost hateful culture compared to the noble Dela, although they don't see it that way. Yeah, as HyperTurtle mentioned, they have something called the Chain of Ascension, which is a rank system from the lowest all the way through the ranks to the High Lord. All Tal'Darim, with the exception of one group, which are the Blood Hunters, are bound by this chain. The High Lord is effectively rank 0 and can command all below. Directly below the High Lord is the first Ascendant, below is the second, so on and so forth. The actual term, which is mentioned in the short story Ascension, is obey the link above, command the chain below. The Blood Hunters are the Tal'Darim Dark Templar units, which act to hunt down deserters. In reality, as they answer to the High Lord, these Blood Hunters often become the High Lord's secret police. So, as I've said before, Tal'Darim society is basically what happens if you have the ladder as the core function of your society. At the top, you have, well, I was gonna say Seville, but
Geralt? Yeah.
yeah, but he recently fell in combat, so
Hmm?
is he number one right now?
So at the top, you have the goats.
Yes, whoever it is, you have the goat. Then you
Oh.
have number two.
Des-
I just had to
Despite
do that.
despite them worshiping Aemon, he has no respect for them. They're the creations of the other Zelnaga. He wants the hybrid, but he leads them along. He convinces them that he's going to raise them up while just kind of shrugging
Yeah,
them off. And this whole chain of ascension kind of keeps them fighting each other anytime they're not fighting anyone else.
yeah, it's
The
kind of
Alarak short story there was a really nice one because you see him basically sort of engineering things so that a couple of the people above him end up taking each other out.
yep. So within the society, right? So how do you then climb the chain? So they do this something called the Rite of Vakshir. Okay, okay. So if the person above you dies by natural causes, maybe get shot by the Terrans or eaten by the Zerg
That's natural? Okay. But okay, go on.
by Tal'Darim standards, yeah, then you take their place. But if you openly wish to dispose him or her, the only way is to Vakshir. Any attack outside of Vakshir would be deemed illegitimate and the offender punished. Quote, painfully and slowly. If they got caught, of course, no witnesses, no crime, right? Okay, but to do it formally, uh, let's see. Okay, in this, two contestants duel along. In this, no others may interfere directly. However, others may lend their psionic support to boost their champion. This was supposed to allow for the rule of the strong, with only the most capable ruling. But what if a leader is weaker in martial combat yet a brilliant strategist? In this case, the leader should have the support of others to lend their psionic support, allowing them to defeat their opponents that might be stronger. So, this entire Vakshir is beautifully illustrated in the Legacy of the Void mission, also called Vakshir, where you
And
have to
also co-op.
basically, yes, and also in the co-op mission, Chain of Ascension, which is this week's weekly mutation, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you actually get to, I mean, rather than
It's
us,
it's like if you could influence a tug of war match by voting. It's like
oh
it's,
yeah, and
makes for a good game mechanic.
and
Just
one
get as
and,
many
and
people
one
near them.
and one way to reduce the number of votes is to just kill them.
Yeah. So, there's some great stuff. Like before Alarak takes on that Rakshir mission, the first thing he does is get someone else to kill a bunch of people
Mhm.
who would be supporting his opponent. Um,
Yeah, that's actually
but
one of the
also, if two guys above you are challenging each other to Rakshir, no matter what happens, no matter who wins, you go up a link.
you're getting promoted.
Yeah, and they're still, they do not join the Dalam. They allow a one-time option for people under them who like really enjoyed fighting alongside the Dalam to join, but they stay separate, and you see them later on feuding with Nova's team,
Mhm.
feuding with Stetman's Mech Swarm.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, that happened
And,
in this sacred land. Yes.
and yeah, can't beat John Delancey, anytime he's condescending, whether it's as Q in Star Trek: The Next Generation or as Discord and My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic.
Absolutely. Um, so yeah, so yeah. For those wondering, if you actually play the mission Chain of Ascension, coming quickly back to Action, let me wrap up this point.
Hmm.
Even though it's an unnamed Tal'Darim, by pure Tal'Darim standards, that had to be the second Ascendant because you can only challenge the link above you directly. So apparently, Amon's, or rather Alarak's purge was not as successful as he thought it was if this co-op mission is to be taken into account. Now that
Yeah,
said,
and
the Tal'Darim as this faction was technically introduced in 2010 with the Wings of Liberty mission Welcome to the Jungle and a very odd character by the name of Executor Nylon.
And the only reason we know his name is because there's an unlockable portrait of him that is called Nylon. So it's very odd.
Yeah.
I wanted to chime in with one other thing, and that's that the Tal'Darim don't have engineers, or not the same level. Everything, all their technology is stuff that they stole, uh, as pirates, and basically touched up a little bit.
Oh, hey, there's a mothership core here.
Yep, yeah, that's an interesting one. If you're in custom games and you choose Heart of the Swarm as your expansion, you can have mothership cores back, and the Forged and Purifier factions have mothership skin. The other ones, it'll just look like like a standard mothership core. But while you're changing it, there'll be that weird little sort of ball with the checker squares on it, because they don't have an asset for in between.
Mhm. Which is actually kind of funny because in the skin sets, it's actually not called the Tal'Darim skin set because they
No, it's the
used,
Forged.
yeah, they actually used the Forge, which again is what the Tal'Darim simply translates to,
Tal'Darim means the Forged.
which does.
Well, not pretty much, but okay, go
Yeah,
on.
so this was featured in the BlizzCon. This was actually pretty important for StarCraft 2 history because this was the first skin set with the first war chest all the way back in 2017. Oh yes, it was also mentioned in an interview from the SC2 team that they made plans for other mission packs. Like they only did Nova Covert Ops, but they were planning others.
They had ideas on the table anyway.
Alarak was one of the names mentioned.
Mhm.
However, focus resources were shifted to focus on co-op commanders because co-op just blew up in popularity beyond anyone's expectation.
And war chests as well, yeah, between the two of them. Did we want to very quickly touch on the Ihanri?
Oh yes, yes, yes. And
This is
oh
a weird one because these guys have never appeared in any of the comics, novels, or campaign missions.
yeah,
But there's enough. They came out along. That skin came out alongside the skins for the Cerberus Zerg and the Tyrador Terrans.
the Knights of
And throughout
Terrador.
the whole thing, yeah, there's this little mini story of the planet Tyrador was in the Nova Covert Ops missions, and some of the books is kind of a big vacation planet. And I
Was
guess this Protoss faction who had been out in the void, I guess, with the Tal'Darim, not with the Tal'Darim, with the Xel'Naga, they just kind of showed up and said, "Hey, this vacation spot's built on our holy ground." But
yeah.
before they could really get into a big conflict, a bunch of Zerg who were remotely controlled by some mysterious Terrans ended up getting involved too,
We
and then
might
they did it all over again when they added the building skins.
at some point we might do a short dive because there's really not that much onto
There really isn't.
yeah the Battle of Terrador 9. But coming back to the Ihadri specific, I remember when this came out. This took like our we sound way too scholarly. This took our law experts by complete surprise because there was literally no precedent for any of these guys. Like, oh, there's a new faction. Like, wait, what? And there was a long debate on okay, so when did these guys split? Because they have starships, but they didn't leave with the Zaldago, whom they still worship. Wait, who are you guys again? Basically, uh,
And they're in the lore, they are mysterious. There was
they're super.
something about them hanging out with the Xel'Naga, but they did kind of appear out of nowhere
Yeah, the
and
the
just wanted their planet back.
the
And
in-game.
they, yeah,
No, the in-law reason that they came back is because I quote, then a distress call from the Dark Templar Zeratul reached a fleet of Ihadri Protoss drifting in stasis on the very edge of the sector. Now they determined to reclaim, okay, so on and so forth. So that is assumed to be distress beacon, he says at the beginning of Legacy of the Void. So apparently what happened is they got the call, they checked who it was, no answer. They called again, no answer because they were too dead. They looked around, they got their breakfast, and they went back to their home planet to see Terrans and Zergs fighting on it.
to see if their locker combinations were still the same. Yeah.
And they were very, they were
I
very,
forgot.
they were
Was
very
this scan introduced
disappointed.
before?
They were very,
Oh,
very
yeah.
disappointed that their favorite doll, that the wildlife on the planet was greatly diminished. My pets all died. What happened?
So I forget, and I'm
Yes.
trying to look this up. Did that skin set come out before or after Zeratul was released as a co-op commander? Because I know they did the
That's a
same
tough one.
kind of look with sort of almost the stone carving armor.
Yeah.
War Chess 2019. I think that was after, right?
I remember
I
it
think
was
Zeratul came out pre-COVID. I think.
Yeah,
Zeratul
Sorry,
was
that's like my.
announced. Zeratul
Zeratul
was
was
announced
announced
at
at
BlizzCon.
uh, Mike Morhaim's last BlizzCon, and then there was
Then it was
2018.
definitely before
2018.
2019. Yeah.
2018.
yeah 2018 and 2019. Like they've
Okay, yeah. So
snapped around Gamescom, and then the final BlizzCon they've had was Minsk. So I'd assume after.
yeah, it was definitely after because if
So
this came out,
I think this was kind of meant to capitalize on the way Zeratul's units looked in co-op.
the Stalker is literally the same one you see in co-op missions.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep, yep. But to be honest, we know very, very little about these guys.
We know
We
they didn't have mothership cores.
that we do, but we don't have any named characters. We
Uh,
don't have any idea of how their society operates apart from flavor text. We have honestly no idea what happened following the events of the battle.
and the
Um,
two planned comics that were meant for the next two rounds of War Chess were all Nature of the Beast, so they weren't going to explain in there either.
yeah,
So
Sometimes you just need to invent a new faction and
oh,
hand wave some stuff so you can get the skin set out.
it gives the fanfic people a blank slate to work with.
mm,
Yeah.
that's very appropriate given that the last skin set 6 went to the War Chess Team League with 4 shades of Protoss.
Oh yeah.
Yes,
Yes,
that was
indeed.
That
the
was a good
last
time.
one. Um,
That was a good time.
something that's worth pointing out is that this came out coming back to the real world, and the very sad thing I have to pull up every time I talk enough about Blizzard, which is the fact that on October 15th, 2020, they announced they're no longer doing paid content.
The day the
So
music died,
much, yeah. So
and
basic,
that was the
yeah. Go ahead.
it was the second round. Ihan Re, first they had a unit skin set, and then the final one was the structure skin set. Yes.
Correct, correct. So a lot of the things that could have happened, you could actually see evidence. For example, with the if for example, FearDragon, if you go to the Starcraft Watches Nature of the Beast compilation, which HyperTurtle bought, there it is. Yeah, it actually says here, don't miss this complete anthology, which collects Starcraft Watches comics from season 6 and 7, as well as season 8 short story by award-winning so on and so forth. So you could
Yeah.
see that there were a lot of things that they had planned that just never came to pass.
Well, I think they were planning to continue on the same kind of routine they had been, which was every year two war chests, two more co-op commanders.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
So there's
I
definitely stuff that was on the table and not completed.
I think the combination of most of the StarCraft 2 development team leaving at the end of 2019 and then COVID, I think those
Mhm.
two things changed a lot of plans. Oh yeah,
The
not
guys
to
who were
mention
driving
Blizzard's.
it,
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
also Blizzard had some PR nightmares stuff. Like there was a lot that happened in
I heard some
2020 and
rumblings here
2019.
and there. I don't know.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yes, the war chests were very much a Tim Morton thing, um, and
super.
Kevin Dong had very much taken over co-op, Ryan Shooter user interface. So yeah, they wanted to work on another RTS. Blizzard didn't want another RTS, so they founded a company that wanted to build an RTS.
Yep. And links to all this was going to be down in the description. But it's really, really sad because let me ask you guys this. Let's go back to the purifiers for a quick second. They've got a war chest skin set, for the units. They don't have one for the buildings, and yet every single Protoss building except 3 are in the game already fully polished, fully QA balanced, more or less. In fact, here's the cannon, and, for example. All they needed to do was add 3 buildings, and you were good to go.
Well,
Well,
I think what they really need is what they really don't have is someone in charge to decide what to do next.
mm,
They've got community forums for the balance. They've got ESL and Team Liquid for the maps. They've got Nicholas Chassois for the very, very rare portraits they put out.
mm, but
So
yeah,
if you're gonna make decisions about a game, you have to have someone in a position to make those. So
well, as of this moment, we can't even say with absolute certainty who's gonna be in charge of Activision Blizzard. So, go follow Stormgate. They've more independence there. Yeah. By the way, do you guys know one of the 3 buildings? One of the
One of the
one of
3
the
buildings
three
that are missing.
buildings of
one of the 3 missing buildings
that
from
doesn't
the
have a purifier skin,
yes.
Shield battery?
Very good. That's
I
one.
would say the Dark Shrine.
Yes.
Uh, Again, let's see. What is Phoenix missing? Fleet Beacon.
I've spent too much time being salty about this.
Oh, have you?
Yes.
Ah,
It's right there, damn it. Like
is it?
like like especially when you watch PvP and both sides are running different skin set, the game looks so much better. It feels like it's the
Yeah.
Daylab versus the Forged, or the EHV versus the Golden Age.
That
I
was one
like
of the
that.
best
Although
changes.
I prefer to just blend in as many together as I possibly can myself.
I
Anyway,
prefer when the Protoss players pick the one skin set where Stalkers and Immortals are almost indistinguishable. It is just impossible to read.
yeah,
I
yeah,
think it's the Forge skin set where you just can't from the top down, you just cannot tell the difference between Immortals and Stalkers. Because they made the Immortal arms so stubby. They look
that's
like
the
Stalkers.
Forged. That's the
Yeah.
Forged. Alright, so we're gonna wrap this up. We're almost done, but
Yeah.
Wait, what was the third building?
the Templar Archives.
Okay, that
They've
makes sense.
he's got no Archons.
True.
Mm.
Which they do in the Forge skin set. There's even a flavored text. But speaking of
Well,
flavored text and immortals, okay, before we wrap this up, one thing I would like to do is that I would like to read the flavor text for the immortal because it really shows you the difference between the 3 different factions. So, okay, so who or what is the immortal which can or I just realized, FearDragon, that this is a quantum unit because it may or may not survive a nuclear bomb. Um, okay, anyway, so for the default for the Daylab, when revered Protoss heroes fall, their remains are transplanted into robot exoskeletons. These heavily armed and shielded immortals are among the most loyal of warriors, and they're borderline like revered as these are great warriors who almost died, but they're gonna continue to serve us. What a great thing they are. Now let's talk about the Forged, or the Tal'Darim. Encased within armored assault frames, Tal'Darim warriors who are felt in failure and disgrace seek the opportunity to erase their shame. Their hope is to die in service of the High Lord. Basically, you lost. You're not dead. Go try again, scrub. GGV, right? Go queue up your next game right now and get back your damn ladder points. Or die trying. In fact, we prefer you to die trying. Okay. Okay, we're gonna skip the do the bottle for time. In the for the purifiers, in the aftermath of the end war, the purifiers have been able to repurpose the shells of deceased immortals so that they can continue functioning as purely robotic fighters. Okay, quite standard. Um, you have then the Golden Age skin set. After the end wars, some fallen Templar elected to be placed into ancient immortal exoskeletons to show their dedication to the ideas that united the Protoss in times of trouble. So very noble. Thankfully, yeah, the Dark Templar not complaining about this, but the one that really stood out to me, Hanri. The Hanri heroes who die honorably are interred in four-legged robotic sarcophagi, which carries their remains to future battles armed with tremendous cannons. Yeah, so this is a walking, shooting tombstone.
Wait, so yeah, they aren't. They don't actually have anything biological in them,
No.
Nope.
or
Just
like they're not alive anymore.
Yeah.
right. But they do
Oh.
have some decaying matter in there, I guess, you know.
They have
That's
biological mass. I don't know if they should get a biological tag for it. But yeah.
Yeah.
well, I mean, they didn't have one to begin with, so there you go.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
But it's kind
Sidestorm
of like
got
a
the
walking pyramid, isn't it? It's like, okay, just tried robbing this.
got me. I dare you. Then the Viper's like, okay, we'll give it a try. Yeah.
All
So
right.
yeah. So this
Anything we wanted to wrap up with?
Yep. Let's wrap this up. Okay. Great. That is in general the yeah, a summary of the StarCraft 2 lore, especially in the different factions. Of course, there's a lot more content, such as all the different skins. We might get to that in future episodes. Alright, but we're gonna let our wonderful guest and host go. Before they do the Fear Dragon, where can they find you? What are you up to these days?
Ooh, that's a hard question to answer. You can find me on FearDragons.Ft on all social media. It's just it's nice and easy. Maybe if you're wondering if I'm on a platform, just look if FearDragon.Ft exists because nobody else ever grabs that. So, um, yeah, and I'm mostly doing YouTube stuff, but at this point, and I very occasionally will stream, but do not count on that. So,
Okay. And HyperTurtle.
You can find me on the Facebook page MN Barcraft. Uh, Other than that, I'm going to be doing a lot more work with Psystorm Gaming, so you might find me on KJ Freedom's Discord, Twitch channel, and I'm planning to make some posts about that as soon as we're ready to get a little bit more stuff out. But we're planning to have it be. I'm trying to put together sort of community nights where a bunch of people can get together, try out, just kind of casually give a shot at various StarCraft 1 and StarCraft 2 game modes, learn a little bit about the history of it, some of those terrible maps that were long abandoned but are still very fascinating, and just a chance for everyone just to have a good time and not really worry about whether they win or lose because we're going to give ample opportunities to blame whatever maps and settings I choose.
Yeah. Awesome.
And
Awesome.
then for now, you'll find me hurrying up to pick up my daughter from her grandparents.
Alright. Time for the Warp
nice.
Prism to head off.
I had one. I sorry, I forgot. I literally wrote down
Yep.
one question I had, which is on the Ihan Re, which I totally forgot to ask.
Yep.
The High Templar skin for Ihan Re has like a sigil on it on its cape. What is that sigil? Do you guys
Oh
know?
god, did you do this on purpose?
No, I don't.
Okay, there was
I
a long
wrote this
dispute
down
about
because
that.
I had a useless fact for it, but I wanted to know what it was.
Oh, there was a long dispute about sigils.
Oh boy. Okay.
Yeah.
Is this
Just
is
some
this
of them
something we
really
should?
have. There's a lot of symbols that have shown up places where they shouldn't have,
Okay.
especially like the decals next to the Nexus
Yeah.
hatcheries and command centers within campaign that just don't make sense if you think about it.
Okay. It sounds like this is something we should just shelf, shelf and never
Yeah, there
touch.
was a long dispute once all the decals came. I was like, wait, this isn't right. What's going on? Then it's like, do we have to retcon it? Did they make a mistake? Is Nova's eyes the wrong color? And yeah,
I'm very fortunate in that I do not contribute to the wiki, so if I don't have an answer, I can just shrug it off.
yeah. Okay, great. If you do like
All
this
right.
content, do like and subscribe. And not for me, for the Zealot. Walk, walk, walk.